The room went quiet when Jonathan, our CEO, slammed the folder shut. "This," he said, pointing at the empty space where my report should have been, "is why the Horizon deal collapsed. She failed to deliver." I felt every eye in the boardroom shift to me. I'd spent months leading that deal, flying overnight to Hong Kong, eating vending machine dinners in airports, only for him to erase my work and hand me the blame. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but he kept going, louder. "We can't afford dead weight. From today, Elena will be moved to a non-strategic role, no client contact." My chair felt cold, my hands frozen around the pen I'd been using to take notes for his presentation. What he didn't know was that my laptop, still open beside me, held a folder labeled Horizon, unedited, and in it was the truth. I didn't say a word in that room. Let him think I was stunned into silence. The truth was sharper than anything I could have said. Jonathan had cut me out of the Horizon deal after I'd done the groundwork, then pushed it to his protégé, Lucas, to close. But Lucas had botched the final meeting, missing half the compliance requirements I'd already solved. When Horizon's lawyers flagged the errors, Jonathan quietly withdrew, spinning it as a strategic decision. Now he was pinning the failure on me to cover his misstep. As they moved on to the next agenda point, I stared at the CEO's reflection in the glass wall. I knew then I wasn't just going to clear my name. I was going to take everything: the deal, the respect, the position he thought was untouchable, and I had the first weapon already in hand. The first weapon was buried in the compliance reports Jonathan never bothered to read. Horizon's rejection letter wasn't just about Lucas's mistakes. It hinted at deeper due diligence issues in our own filings. I had copies, every time-stamped email, every edit showing when I'd fixed them before they were overwritten by Lucas's version. I slipped into the archive late that night, downloading everything onto an encrypted drive. It wasn't just leverage. It was proof that Jonathan's leadership wasn't just sloppy, it was reckless. I could use it to tear his credibility apart in front of the board. But proof wasn't enough. I needed timing, precision. Taking him down too soon would only give him a chance to spin it. I had to make him believe I was finished, so when I came back, it would be too late for him to block the hit. The next morning, I walked into the office with my resignation letter already printed, tucked into my notebook like a death sentence no one saw coming. Jonathan didn't even look up when I placed it on his desk, just smirked like he'd won. "Probably for the best," he said, as if dismissing an intern. My hand stayed steady, my voice calm. "You'll get your smooth transition," I told him. But as I left, I noticed Lucas watching me from across the open floor, confusion in his eyes. He didn't know I'd already copied the flagged compliance files onto the drive hidden in my tote. By lunch, my access badge was deactivated, my email wiped. Perfect. They thought I was gone for good. But the truth? I just stepped off the stage so I could pull the curtains down on them in front of their entire audience. I spent the next week in silence, ignoring the flood of good luck texts that rang hollow in my phone. Instead, I pieced together every thread I'd collected over the past year: memos Jonathan had signed without reading, budgets Lucas had adjusted without approval, compliance reports mysteriously missing from quarterly packets. It all painted the same picture. They weren't just cutting corners, they were building an empire on lies. The drive in my tote became my anchor. Every file on it was a nail in their coffin. I even found one email chain where Jonathan explicitly approved bypassing a safety check to speed up market entry. If that ever went public, the board wouldn't just replace him, they'd make him the scapegoat. And I was ready to be the one holding the matches. By Thursday, I had everything labeled, cross-referenced, and backed up twice. One copy in a cloud account they didn't know existed, another on a thumb drive caped under the drawer of my kitchen table. I wasn't rushing. Revenge, I'd learned, works best when it's airtight.
Jonathan called twice that week, both times leaving voicemails that sounded rehearsed, like he was trying to play the reasonable CEO in case I was recording. Lucas sent a single text, "You don't have to do this." That told me two things. He knew exactly what I was capable of, and he was already afraid. I let them both stew while I made an appointment with someone I hadn't spoken to in years, a journalist who'd once begged me for an inside tip. This time, I wouldn't just give her a lead, I'd give her a bomb. We met in the back corner of a quiet cafe, the kind where the music is just loud enough to blur conversations, but not loud enough to be suspicious. Julia, still wearing that battered leather notebook strapped to her bag, looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. "You disappeared," she said, "and now you show up with what exactly?" I slid the folder across the table, every page marked with dates, signatures, and the kind of transactions that keep lawyers awake at night. She flipped through them slowly, her expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief to something that looked like hunger. "If this is real," she whispered, "they'll burn for this." I sipped my coffee. "It's real, and I'm not here to save anyone. I just want the truth in the right hands." She leaned in, almost smiling. "Then you came to the right person." Julia didn't waste time. By the next morning, she had cross-checked every figure, every wire transfer, every fake invoice. "They've been bleeding the company for years," she said over the phone, her voice sharp with adrenaline. "And the CEO signed off on all of it." I could hear papers rustling, the sound of her pacing. "But here's the thing, if we release this without a plan, they'll bury it before it hits daylight." I knew she was right. Power doesn't panic, it prepares. So we built the leak like a timed detonation. 3 media outlets, each with a different angle, an anonymous tip to the financial regulator, a quiet alert to the board members who weren't in on it. I told Julia, when it starts, it has to hit so hard they can't regroup. She just laughed, low and certain. "Oh, it will. By the time they wake up, it'll already be over." The night before we launched, the office was dark except for the glow of my laptop. Every file, every email, every damning attachment sat in a locked drive, ready to go live at 6 a.m. sharp. Julia had the media contacts lined up. Each of them promised an exclusive angle they couldn't resist. I barely slept, half from adrenaline, half from the fear of what came after. At 5:59 a.m., my finger hovered over the send key. One deep breath. At 6 exactly, the first batch went out. The rest triggered automatically. Within minutes, headlines lit up across the finance sector. $1 billion fraud. Boardroom corruption. CEO implicated. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, texts, voicemails piling up. By the time the executives arrived for their morning meetings, the building wasn't buzzing with routine chatter. It was silent, unnervingly silent, like the air right before a storm. By 8 a.m., the executive floor was chaos. Assistants were running between offices, phones ringing with unanswered calls. I saw the CEO storm past with 2 board members trailing him, their faces pale. Julia texted me only one word: landed. Then came the sound of the building's security doors locking, an automatic response to a crisis. Someone had ordered all staff to stay put until further notice. My inbox exploded with requests to clarify the situation, as if I had anything to explain. I kept my head down, typing like I was just another employee caught in the storm. But inside, I was counting down. The second leak to the regulator was set to hit in 30 minutes, and when it did, the company's stock wouldn't just dip, it would free fall. At 8:30 sharp, the second wave hit. Financial news channels interrupted broadcasts to announce the regulator's investigation. Trading in our shares was halted within minutes. Investors began demanding emergency meetings. The CEO's door slammed so hard the glass rattled. I caught sight of him through the frosted glass, gesturing wildly, his tie askew, his voice breaking from rage. Julia messaged, "Board split. Some are jumping ship." That was the crack we needed. When power starts to fracture, it stops thinking about survival as a whole. It starts thinking about self-preservation, which meant, for the first time, they'd turn on each other. I just had to let them tear themselves apart. By mid-morning, the third leak, the quiet alert to the clean board members, ignited its own fire. I watched as two of them walked into the CEO's office and closed the door. 15 minutes later, they came out, faces grim, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Word spread fast. An emergency board meeting was scheduled for noon. I knew what that meant. They were preparing to cut him loose, try to contain the damage. But they were already too late. Reporters were camped outside the building. Shareholders were threatening lawsuits. Employees whispered in hallways, glancing over their shoulders. And I sat at my desk, answering a routine email about quarterly budgets, as if the company wasn't bleeding out in real time. The board meeting dragged past 2 hours. When the doors finally opened, the CEO emerged looking like a man who'd just been handed his own obituary. No shouting now, no bravado, just quiet, exhausted defeat. Julia called. "It's done. He's out." The official statement was careful, clinical. He was stepping down to focus on personal matters. But the truth was louder than any press release. He'd been forced out, stripped of power, and the investigation would follow him for the rest of his life. And still, the leaks weren't finished. The media kept digging, finding connections even Julia and I hadn't uncovered. The story was no longer ours to control. It had taken on a life of its own. The following week felt like watching a storm dismantle a city piece by piece. Longtime executives resigned voluntarily. The CFO vanished from the building one afternoon and never returned. Contracts were canceled, partnerships dissolved, employees left in waves. The company I'd spent years building was collapsing, and for the first time, I didn't feel pain watching it go. I felt release. Julia and I never spoke about what came next for the company. That wasn't our concern anymore. We'd done what we came to do, and in our silence, we'd made sure they never saw us coming until it was too late. Months later, I passed the building on my way to lunch. The logo was gone, the lobby empty, glass doors chained shut. A for lease sign hung where the company's name used to be. I stood there for a moment, remembering the day I was pushed aside, told I was not strategic enough. I thought about every smirk, every closed-door meeting, every stolen idea. Julia met me at the cafe across the street. She glanced at the building, then at me. "Worth it?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I just smiled, slow and certain, the way she had months ago. Because the truth was simple. It wasn't just worth it. It was the only ending they deserved.